Where have we got to? Well, we've seen that wherever we are, we feel homesickness for a home to which we cannot return, a home which maybe never was, the nostalgia, the yearning, the grief for the lost places of our past. All of our efforts in science and the arts bring us to disappointing dead ends. We cannot seem to shake the sense that we're cut off by time and distance and something else from the place we really want to be, the place we belong, from our home. And all this despite the fact that for over a century we've been telling ourselves and acting as if we are already at home.
In late December 2016, a man was seen standing, looking out of the window of his large country home. He was a man who had made it in life. He had everything that the X Factor tantalized millions of viewers with week after week. He was one of the best-selling artists of all time, with over 80 million records sold worldwide during his solo career alone. And yet, it had all turned out to be nothing more than a mirage. This man was 53-year-old international pop sensation George Michael. The next day, news of his tragic death would hit the headlines around the world.
The most powerful ideas are the ones that never have to justify themselves. In Wales today, one idea in particular has been taken for granted for over 100 years, that the world we can see, hear, touch, smell and taste is all there is. It is the air we breathe, such that any suggestion that there might be something else and something more is quickly dismissed, regarded as simply a delusion that would prevent us from making the most of what we have and making ourselves at home.
In the 19th century, the philosopher John Stuart Mill took to politics and economics with what he described as the desire to create an earthly hope for the human race. His godson, Bertrand Russell, took this further in a 1927 lecture, Why I Am Not a Christian, in which he claimed, religion is based primarily upon the fear of the unknown and partly the wish to feel that you have a kind of elder brother who will stand by you in all your troubles and disputes. In this world, we can now begin to understand things, to master them with the help of science. Science can help us get over this fear. Our hearts can teach us no longer to look around for imaginary supports, no longer to invent allies in the sky, but rather to look to our own efforts here below to make this world a fit place to live in.
The idea that we are home alone and that we are to make the best of it is now so deeply entrenched in popular culture that it pervades nearly all the stories we tell and the songs we sing. In the 70s and 80s, Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy wittily informed us that we live on an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet orbiting a small, unregarded yellow sun, far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy. More recently, popular academic Peter Atkins said, "It is time to stand foursquare in front of the glorious world and accept we are alone." All alone in a cold, dark universe, we are to make the most of it by trying to get as much stuff as we can. The more we have, we suppose, the happier we will be, although those with the most are often the unhappiest of all.
You can kind of get away with anything if you put your own morality on that. So you can justify anything you do in context. And that's how I lived. I mean, I was doing a good job. So I was like looking after really vulnerable people, and I kind of justified everything through that. And that's not right. And I wasn't a good person. I got to church, this guy took me to church after months of, and I mean months, and I remember I got home and I said to Kath, I'm going to go to church to shut him up. Yeah. And I cannot put up with him every tea break. I was employing him as a contractor and he was going, you need to go to church. I'm like, right, in a minute, I'm going to go mental. But we went together to church, which you don't normally do when as a family, as a couple. If you're in absolute disaster mode, you don't tend to do stuff together, let alone go to church. but we did, and I don't know how we did because I didn't want to go, and you didn't particularly like me, and we went, and that was it. That put our feet back, and then you talk about that, you know, the Holy Spirit binding us together, and really, we're always focused pretty much in the same direction. It's all Christ related, isn't it?
Well, hasn't thinking this is all there is at least meant we've made the most of it? Not at all. Since we decided that this is all there is and that we are all alone in the universe, we've been trying to make the most of it and invest it with the deepest meaning and significance we can. It did seem such an empowering stance at the start, but it's turned out to be both crushing and disappointing. Far from enabling us to make more of life, it has reduced our lives to eating, drinking, and being merry, for tomorrow we die. We aim for nothing more than a good innings and to be able to go out to Sinatra's I Did It My Way. We tell each other that we're where we're supposed to be, but our hearts and lives betray us that we're not, and we don't really know where we are at all. I think we have to seriously ask if we're not at home with our environment, with one another, and even with ourselves, if we experience a yearning and longing for a home that we cannot get to, then where exactly are we?
Exiled in the pigsty of a far country and lost, we are the wrong side of the dark door and far from home. Although in our age we thought we could be anything we wanted, we seem to be unable to shake the feeling that we are far away and somehow cut off from where we are supposed to be. T.S. Eliot once described it not as a feeling of anything I have ever done, which I might get away from, or anything in me I could get rid of, but of emptiness, of failure towards someone or something outside myself.
One of the most curious characteristics of our spiritual longings, said C.S. Lewis, is something we usually notice just as the moment of vision dies away, as the music ends, or as the landscape loses the celestial light. For a few minutes, we have had the illusion of belonging to that world. Now we wake to find that it is no such thing. We have been mere spectators. Beauty has smiled, but not to welcome us. Her face was turned in our direction, but not to see us. We have not been accepted, welcomed, or taken into the dance. The sense that in this universe we are treated as strangers, the longing to be acknowledged, to meet with some response, to bridge some chasm that yawns between us and reality, is part of our inconsolable secret. At present, we are on the outside of the world, the wrong side of the door.
More and more people do have a deep sense that there's something very wrong. In exile, in a pigsty at a far country, lost and on the wrong side of the door, we're far from home. We swipe through Tinder, endlessly looking for the one with whom there will be the perfect connection, all the right chemistry and incredible intimacy, the one for whom we were made. More than ever today, we feel alone and frightened, orphans and adrift in a cold, dark world of pandemics and death, left to work it out for ourselves in a universe which has come from nowhere and's going nowhere, no more than grown-up germs sitting on the cog of a vast cosmic machine that is slowly but inexorably running down into nothingness. We look for communities to belong to, but more and more of us identify with the growing online communities of self-proclaimed outsiders, even in the countries we were born.
Guide me, you, thou great Redeemer, pilgrims through this barren
We have told ourselves that we can make our home here and turn earth into heaven, and yet the fulfillment of this dream always seems to be in the distance. Not now, but when another party comes to power. After Brexit, after the Euros. If we only had more retail therapy, a better diet, a taste of fame, that job, that relationship, then we would be truly happy. And yet, all the research shows that the harder happiness is pursued, the more elusive it becomes. We have never really managed to close the door to something else. If we had, we could dispense with the word Hiraeth. As it stands, we feel it more than ever. But what if, in the words of C.S. Lewis, our lifetime nostalgia, our longing to be reunited with something in the universe from which we now feel cut off, to be on the inside of some door which we have always seen from the outside, is no mere neurotic fancy, but the truest index of our real situation.
In late December 2016, on Christmas Eve, international pop superstar George Michael was last seen looking out of the window of his large country house. It was strange, given all that he had, that he should have been seen looking out at something else, something which he wasn't part of, something which he didn't have. That last night of his life, he was seen looking out at a torchlit procession of people from the village church, celebrating that event which was to be the turning point in the history of the world. An older story, which has long been buried and covered over, the story of Christmas.
Is there any way that Hiraeth isn't a dead end? There is one way. The world wants to go home, but the world cannot get home. Nor can the world make its home here and now, no matter how hard it tries. We have to ask ourselves, what if things that have been lost and forgotten, that our ancestors lived and died by, were true all along?